Thank you, Team Simsacho. May I now invite Team Cyclone to come upon the stage to present their ideas. Team Cyclone, please.
Since its inception in the 1960s, HIT has been at the forefront of its industry for the past 50 years. Yet now we are 1 decade into the 21st century, and HIT currently faces a variety of questions, the most important of which being, what are the steps it can take to remain competitive and dynamic in a rapidly changing industry? Good afternoon. My colleagues and I represent Coombs & Co. Consulting, and today we are here to present to you a set of recommendations that will allow HIT to be sustainable, competitive, and dynamic. Today we will walk you through our analysis of the situation, our key recommendations, the financial impact and risks of our recommendations, as well as how we will implement our strategies. First, we analyze HIT's current position as being a regional container hub facing 2 major threats, the first of which being increasing competition from ports in mainland China, which has led to a loss in major customers in the import-export business. Secondly, HIT currently faces a number of capacity constraints, which has forced HIT to make trade-offs regarding the types of cargo they service, as well as dealing with the types of the increase in transshipment activity, meaning they are unable to serve the large amount of volume and demand currently at their fingertips. In order to mitigate these threats, we propose 2 recommendations, the first of which being Smooth Sailing, a customer relationship management program that will allow HIT to better serve its customers, to build their customer relationships, and strengthen customer loyalty. The second of these strategies deals with capacity constraints. We call this Docking at Sea. It is an innovative capacity expansion program, which is the construction and use of floating container storage and transshipment terminals as a way to overcome the land constraints that HIT currently faces. The financial impact is a net present value of $220 million per terminal. But before we go into detail with our recommendations, we wanted to first take a look at the industry. We analyzed that the port industry is heavily intertwined with that of the shipping industry, and the key trend here is the increase in larger ships, which translate into larger amounts of volume of cargo that HIT must be able to service. HIT, however, comes in with a set of positive forces, including its tightly integrated IT infrastructure, efficiency and quality of service, and most importantly, their competitive advantage at being located in the gateway to Asia. As we mentioned earlier, the biggest problem here is HIT's capacity constraint. HIT currently has the opportunities to serve large amounts of volume in cargo, but we need to turn this golden problem into a golden opportunity. To do that, we considered several different options, the first of which being refocus on a higher margin import-export business as a way to service lower volumes but keep revenues at the same level. We also looked at implementing a CRM program in order for HIT to better service its customers. We also considered increasing tariffs or adjusting pricing as a way to make up for some losses in revenue. We also looked at leasing Kuaicheng as a land expansion opportunity to increase the process and storage capacity for HIT. Second, we have innovative capacity management, which is looking beyond the barriers of land constraint and turning into the ocean as a way to expand process and storage capacity. Lastly, we have investing in Container Terminal 10, which is the current pending government development on the northwest side of Lantau Island, or the south side of Qingyi, as a secondary port in Hong Kong. After we analyze the impacts and weaknesses of each recommendation, we recommend HIT to engage in a CRM program, as well as introduce the innovative capacity management system as a way to help make HIT sustainable and competitive in the future. And now my colleagues will walk you through the recommendations of our strategy.
So first, let's take a look at the competitive landscape that HIT faces. We've outlined 3 competitors. MTL, which is in Kuaishing, which has 7 berths and holds 32% of the Hong Kong throughput. We've outlined 2 operators in Shenzhen, one being Chiwan and the other Shoukou. These have 27% and 17% market share respectively, and they both face the same constraints on capacity. Now, the common theme between all these competitors is their strive for price competition. Now, this price competition is an area where HIT can differentiate themselves from the competition by adding value-added services and get out of these devastating price wars. As we move forward, we can see that traditional success factors have been related based on customer service, speed, reliability, and price. HIT has established a culture of innovation which outlined and set the framework for their IT system, and this IT system will lead the pathway moving forward. What we recommend is using that CRM system to generate more transparent communication with customers and further the developments that HIT has made. This will allow for relevant, timely, and accurate communication. Now, as we look into the CRM system, we can see that it will be leveraging the already in place IT service network. On the slides, you can notice that we have examples listing of what metrics can be measured that our customers, the shipping lines, will see and can relate back to their business. These metrics can be used to help improve communication and lead to what we like to call a culture of continual communication and continual improvement. Let's take a look at exactly what this portal will look like. As you can see, we've pulled up HIT's customer service page. My colleague will help us log in and see exactly what this looks like. Through each step, HIT will be on the side of their customers. This will add value and ensure customer loyalty in the long term. What we have here is just one of many examples. But overall, in the long term, HIT can measure its success through tracking customer relationships and customer progress through surveys or other sources that can help them understand how successful the CRM program has been in retaining and gaining new customers. But with this, there are still the constraints of capacity. And now my colleagues will go into that a little further.
HIT currently has a golden problem. It's constraints in capacity. With the industry forecast as well as the own company's forecast, transshipment business is going to be on a growth pattern, which means that with the current capacity that the HIT currently have, we're not going to be able to handle the capacity of different new transshipment business coming into the port. So how do we solve this problem without running into land issues or government regulation issues? We recommend that HIT look into floating container storage transshipment terminal. In short, we'll call this FCSTT. What exactly is a FCSTT? As you can look onto the slide, this will literally be a floating terminal in the waters that will be operating as a midway operation step. In looking at how to build an FCSTT, we looked into 4 different development options. First, we looked into crane barge types. We then looked into ship conversions, crane barge feeder ships, as well as dry docks. But looking closer at the feasibility of these options, we examined that the feeder ship's capacity is way too small and the dry docks are way too permanent. So now let's look closer at these 2. First, let's look at crane barges. We estimate that each barge can hold at least 2 cranes, and with an estimated capacity of 20 lifts per hour, as well as an average dwell time of containers of 4 days, we can generate an additional 319,000 TEUs per year. Now let's look at the ship conversions. Looking at ship conversion, SCSTT, we are looking at best candidate will be a post-Panamax ship. Converting a post-Panamax ship will give us at least 4 crane spaces, and with better operations as well as storage management system, HIT could take advantage of even getting more cranes onto a ship. Then, using the same assumptions that we used earlier in the crane barge, this will give us an additional 638,000 annual TEU per year, which my colleague will further go into detail on how we derive at this number later. So, in looking at these 2 types of crane types, we examined that 4 crane would be the best option for us because it's a much longer, sustainable option, as well as a much higher financial return in terms of options. In addition, it has an added capacity that HIT desperately needs. Now let's look at how exactly are we actually going to build this FCSTT. In building an implementation plan, we looked at 3 different aspects. First, we looked at which cranes we would use on the boats. Second, we looked at how exactly we're going to have the boat afloat by using the mooring options, in addition to what management storage systems we will utilize to ensure operational efficiency. Let's first look at cranes. In examining cranes, we looked at 3 different types. STS cranes, we looked at wide gantry cranes, as well as slewing cranes. STS is currently used by most operations, but this seems very unfeasible for marine applications because of its heavy weight. In addition, wide spans is convenient for transshipment, but it does not have the length to reach into to look into Panamax ships. So our best option will be into slewing cranes. These cranes not only have the flexibility of directions, they also have the lightweight, and they've been proven by research that they can work on marine applications. Now my colleague is going to go into further details of how we'll make the ship afloat.
So we examined 3 options for mooring options. But first, let's ask the question, what exactly is a mooring buoy? As you can see from the slide above, mooring buoys allow for securing of post-Panamax ships in the middle of the ocean during midstream operations. From this chart, you can see it will drill into the seabed and establish anchors and also buoys to secure the ships. Looking at the options, we considered 3 options: government and privatized, and also HIT developed options. For the first 2, government and privatized options, we do not believe it will be beneficial for HIT's services because there are high uncertainty of availability and also risk associated with privatized companies not allowing HIT utilize the mooring buoys when HIT needs them. So we recommend HIT develop its own mooring buoys, which will allow them to have certainty and control over the mooring buoys utilization, and also be able to secure post-Panamax ships. Now we'll look into storage management options for FCSTT. We recommend that HIT prioritize the FCSTT to utilize direct transshipment cargo containers and also focus on low dwell time transshipment cargo as well. This will emphasize efficiency and also emphasize smooth operations for HIT's FCSTT operations. In summary, our recommendation for FCSTT will utilize a ship conversion and also utilize slewing cranes to move containers, and then use HIT-developed mooring options in order to secure the ship during midstream operations. So how will this recommendation affect, or what sort of financial impact will this recommendation have on HIT? First, we'll look at the operational analysis that my colleague mentioned before. There's a 638,000 TEU capacity for a post-Panamax ship annually. And we envision that HIT will utilize approximately 91% of this capacity annually, because utilizing 4 container cranes operating lifts at 20 containers per hour, operating 20 hours a day, this comes out to be 584,000 TEUs annually, coming to 91% of utilization. We did a financial analysis on this recommendation, and we came up with a $219 million net present value for each terminal that is to be implemented. And HIT can choose to increase the uses of FCSTT terminals as it sees fit and as demand is forecasted to increase. So let's take a look at some of the risks and mitigations that are associated with our recommendations. We want to focus on the first risk that is associated up there. What happens if there is a lack of government support for HIT-developed mooring buoys? We recommend that HIT go and negotiate with government officials and demonstrate the perceived benefits that the mooring buoys will have on Hong Kong's economy, which I can go into more depth during Q&A. And if still that, if the Hong Kong government does not support HIT in developing its own mooring buoys, HIT can still utilize the existing mooring buoys that are out in the sea currently. My colleague will now speak to how we plan to implement the timeline and recommendations that we set forth.
With regards to the implementation of our two initiatives, we'll start with smooth sailing. This is what we call the Monday Morning Action Plan, immediate steps you can begin in the next business week. First, we would recommend HIT to begin discussing site content, site functionality, as well as the user interface with its in-house IT department and web designers. We envision the site to go live in the next 3 to 6 months and insist that HIT re-examine and benchmark the progress of their program through customer surveys to measure the improvement in customer satisfaction and the impact that the site has had on HIT's customers. This process will continue on for the next 1 through 5 years of continuous improvement, getting customer feedback, adding and subtracting functionalities as needed. Now let's turn to docking at sea strategy. This one is a little more complex, but similarly, we also have a Monday morning action plan. We advise HIT to begin negotiations and drawing out the initial planning stages of this recommendation by such as financial planning, price arrangements, as well as discussing the design of the ship with our potential shipbuilder partner. In the next 3 to 6 months, we envision the development and completion of the first mooring buoy, which would be followed by the completion of the first FCS-TT in the next 1 to 2 years. Following this, in the next 2 to 5 years, HIT will be able to build additional FCS-TTs as needed based on demand and capacity. Today, my colleagues and I have presented to you a set of 2 recommendations that will allow HIT to become competitive and dynamic in the future. First, by increasing their customer relationship, building customer loyalty, really solidifying that base, and growing by expanding capacity and overlooking and overcoming the land barriers with regards to process and storage by looking into options on the sea. Thank you for your time, and we will now open up the floor for questions.
I actually am looking at the floating terminal. That's actually a feasible potential solution. But one thing that I do want to ask whether you've considered is that shipping lines are increasingly, forming alliances and consortiums, kind of like airlines doing slot chartering. So if one vessel comes in, put the boxes on the floating yard, and it needs to connect somewhere else, and vice versa. From, let's say, a vessel calling the main terminal needs to go onto the floating yard and connecting. Have you factored in the associated costs with all the movement between the terminal and the floating yard, and how do we deal with that?
So yes, after doing a financial analysis of this recommendation, we actually factored in a lot of externalities that we believe are not foreseen because this recommendation has never been implemented before. We've factored in, like you said, externalities that focus on what happens if customers require us to move these terminals elsewhere in order to help utilize their services better.
In addition to that, looking at the floating terminals, we also estimated that the operating costs will actually be lower while it's in sea than if it is on land, mainly because most of the operating costs involve turning around a ship or coming in, docking fees, all these other issues that would involve within land operation. If at sea, it was actually estimated about 75% lower than if it was on land.
Do you foresee any shuttles between the floating dock and the main terminal of boxes in between? I mean, you talk about big ships, but what about in between?
Yes, on the diagram that Alice talked about earlier, yes, the shuttles would exist. The shuttles would be able to park alongside the floating terminal and be able to equally take shipment off that needed to be docked on land for longer periods of time and shuttle cargo back and forth in order to make those transshipment transfers to the larger motherships.
We wanted to add that because right now, currently, HIT has a superior IT system in terms of managing their storage, we would like to make sure that HIT also operates very efficiently on the floating terminals so that they have an average of at least only 4 days of dwell time of the containers so that we eliminate that storage issue as well as that transference issue between land and in the floating terminals.
You should know that HIT handle about 40% O&D, 60% of transshipment. So when you discharge boxes from the main vessels onto your floating dock or floating terminal, then 40% of the goods have go back to the terminal by shuttle. Now, firstly, who pay for the shuttle? So it would be a double handling. And I think you're suggesting use the champagne at the end of the picture, that you use that small boat to feed the cargo there. I think it would take a bit of time. So who is bearing the extra cost for the filtering between the floating terminal and the main terminal?
Well, with regards, your question was addressing the O&D cargo, where we envision that our FCSTT terminals will be focusing mainly on that 60% of transshipment cargo. And this additional capacity will help lessen the burden on HIT's current land operations.
But this is not an ideal world. When a ship comes in, it brings in both cargo, transshipment and O&D. We can't handle part of it, and then we ask the ship to go on berth to handle the other part of it. So how do we solve this problem to handle both cargo with the floating terminal?
We believe that currently we don't want to raise the tariff on O&D just simply because the same boat comes in with both types of cargoes. But we also want to emphasize that with the additional FCSTT, there will be an additional revenue stream coming in with the growing of transshipment business. So we think that some of that will be able to offset some of the shelling costs that will be incorporated between the land and the water transportation. We believe that having that additional business coming in will be able to offset some of the costs. And for the future references, if that cost becomes really substantive, then we'll be able to figure out a different type of tariff or a different type of pricing model to best subdue those costs.
I really admire the details of your floating device, FCSTT. But I'm kind of concerned because your CRM side, there seems to be, it's quite vague, nothing in there really that I can see in detail. And I'm just wondering, I don't see anything innovative from that side. Did you study, for example, social media networks, how this will apply to your CRM, the system applied by Groupon, mass purchase and everything? How come it's quite vague in that area?
Well, we analyzed the customer base of HIT, and what we came to realize is HIT does not focus on social media or customers that will look to Groupon and those kind of means. What we have envisioned HIT to use the CRM program would be a business-to-business linking of systems so that you can create efficiencies by linking information and having that continual communication. This will utilize HIT's already pre-existing IT network, and it will utilize the IT network that the shipping lines also have to join them together so that that speed and efficiency become the forefront of HIT.
Actually, as I mentioned earlier, I think between airlines where you have sort of like the global alliances, One World and Star Alliance, and I was sort of like looking forward in your CRM system where you're going to drive something in that direction. You're going to have actually shipping lines sharing information and data, and you can actually have capacity, more efficient shipping and everything. So I'm just wondering why you didn't explore that.
As for the CRM system, the reason why we didn't go into further super minute details in terms of the system, because we really wanted to introduce the idea of information transparency between the linkages of HIT's customers as well as HIT the company. We wanted to focus that this was a more value-added, higher level strategy in terms of building that information connection and building that communication channel. We didn't want to focus on what exactly is CRM, what steps we're going to choose, because HIT clearly knows their customers' needs better. And we felt that this was more of an open-ended way to let them explore their options and see what the customers address. And in addition, we wanted to look at customer surveys to see the baseline of what our customers reflect and how they react to our recommendations. And if their recommendations suggest that we should do something different, then HIT could implement that on a continuous basis.
But without a quantitative proof of the linkage between this CRM and also the capacity, how can the company decide, well, how much they should invest into this CRM system, and then what will be the likely payback?
So after doing financial analysis for the FCSTT, it requires approximately $60 million to implement one terminal, and that comes up with net present value of $219 million per terminal net present value. But given that you asked a question about what happens between deciding between the CRM recommendation and also the FCSTT recommendation, we wanted to emphasize and give options to. Oh, CRM is not looking to increase the capacity. It's just looking to build customer loyalty and because most customers of HIT sign contracts of 1 to 2 years. We really want to develop a sort of culture in HIT to foster customers to come back to HIT continuously and not leave for competitors in China or elsewhere.
I want to move back to the DocuNet C. I kind of like this idea. But right now, HIT, from my looking at it in the outside, their competitive advantage is really based on efficiency. Very, very efficient. And now you're throwing a lot of new complexity into the system. DocuNet C, it's separated geographically. It's a whole different type of transshipment and stuff. So aren't you really attacking their core competitive advantage just for the sake of a little bit more capacity? And is it worth it?
So what we've outlined as HIT's competitive advantage is a culture of innovation that was established around in the early 90s. This culture of innovation led to the implementation of the immense IT network, which have provided those efficiencies. And we believe implementing new and innovative strategies like the floating terminals will continue this culture of innovation so that HIT can take this new capacity and learn and grow. So initially, of course, there will be the learning period where HIT develops and learns what the floating terminals will take to maintain and gain efficiencies. But over time, we see these learning periods as being a very, very small part of the larger picture of success in increasing capacity and helping HIT maintain that culture of innovation.
In addition, another one of HIT's core competencies is their management style and their superior management abilities to transform a lot of efficiency ideas and also to be able to be constantly learning something new. We wanted to introduce this new idea because we think that we can still use those same similar strategies that we currently use on land to also apply them so that we can have the efficient system, a system that's just as efficient on sea. And as to how little of the capacity we increase, it actually is a very conservative number that we used because we wanted to make sure that in the initial learning period, there might be times when we don't know how much capacity the boat can handle or how many cranes the ship could be able to hold. So we think that this number, the 630,000 that we suggested annual, could actually be expanded further with more knowledge and more experience in the field. In addition, each boat can give us a lot of additional MPV, which means that we can further expand on this in a longer, much more sustainable period.
Again, thank you very much for very innovative ideas. And one of the things you talked about is the innovativeness of HIT as compared to its neighbors, okay, both here in Hong Kong and perhaps even in China to a large extent. To stay innovative as a company, it's not an easy task, okay? So this is one of the biggest challenges one has. But one of the things I'd like to ask you people as a group, because we we focus on the transshipment. We also focus on the O&D business itself in Hong Kong. Actually, what does Hong Kong have to offer that other people cannot offer, either as a transshipment port or as an O&D? Specifically, other than innovation, what is the competitive advantage of Hong Kong?
Well, through our research, we realized that one of Hong Kong's main advantage is that its location. In terms of being a port operator, location is probably the most important aspect as to the success or failure of your port operations. In our research, we found that shipping or having ships pass through Hong Kong instead of, say, their competitor in Singapore actually saves ships 7 to 8 days on average. And we believe that Hong Kong really needs to leverage its competitive location in terms of being a gateway to Asia. And with regards to our docking at sea strategy, this enables HIT to take opportunities that are in the water, since Hong Kong is a relatively small area and land constraints are in existence.
If I may just follow up, I'm MTL next door. You build all this, I can copy you very, very quickly. So how much advantage do you think you have, and what's your period of advantage?
With regards to your first question, earlier when we talked, integration of both the CRM and docking at sea strategies is to give HIT a competitive advantage in building customer loyalty, providing higher value-added services rather than competing on price. Because when you compete on price, everyone loses. And with regards to MTL and being a competitor, HIT's innovation and the tightly integrated IT infrastructure is what will give it its competitive edge.
Thank you, Team Cyclone. Hey, Cheryl, what do you think about today's presentations?
I think the teams have done an incredible job in incorporating their knowledge and creativity into their presentations. And for their hard work, let's give them a big round of applause.
Okay, this comes to an end of our presentation. Our judges will now deliberate on the 4 teams. Would all the judges please proceed to Salon Room 5 on the 5th floor for deliberation? Thank you. Refreshment is served in this room. Enjoy yourselves and see you all at 5 p.m. in the award presentation ceremony, which will be held next door in the Grand Ballroom 1. Thank you.